Hey everyone, it's Helene from Triangle Veg Fest Expos, the Plant-Based Network, and Virtual Veg Fest. And we are here today with an additional live for you on a very, very important topic. First, remember that you can comment and you can say where you're from and ask any questions in the comment section, and we will see them. We'll try to get to them as soon as we can or as applicable per the conversation. And please also remember to subscribe to the Virtual Veg Fest YouTube channel and go to our website, virtualvegfest.com, and shop. That'd be awesome if you do that. One of the people who's one of the vendors on there is with us today. So it's good for all of us if you go shop, because we'll need to survive during this virus crisis. And that brings us to what we're going to talk about. I am here with Andy Tabar of Compassion Company and Tammie Malorich, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your last name,
Got it.
Tammie Malorich, right? Okay, awesome. And
Yep.
they are vegan, and they both have had the virus, and they both have two completely different stories that they have agreed to share with you today, which is great because I came up with this idea on Thursday and both of them agreed to Sunday, which I thank you very much. So, first, personally, I know both of them. I love them both very much. They are two incredible human beings. I can't say enough about the fact that I met Andy at the Nashville Veg Fest, the first one. There he was with this booth, and I was like, "Oh, I know who you are. I should have put your shirt on today. I thought I was going to do that. Anything you can eat, I can eat vegan." That's his shirt. He's had many incarnations of it. The current one that you can see from 6 feet away. That was my idea. And then, so you've definitely seen him at our events and all the different places that we've been. Andy's pretty much at every event that I do, which is really cool. And he's been a speaker as well. And they did a live podcast at Triangle Veterans last year because he's also the Bearded Vegans. And then Tammie is local to North Carolina in the Triangle. She's someone I've known for
Yes.
about 3 years now, I think. And she's
Mhm.
taken pictures of Triangle Veg Fest, and she's been a really good friend. We've gone and we've watched The Price is Right live, and I've been able to get some of her vegan gluten-free muffins, which is really, really cool. But they're two really awesome people, and to read on Facebook or to get word from common friends that they both have had this virus is it's really hard to hear, because I know that I don't want to get it, and I hate to hear that people that I love have suffered from it. And what I want to do is I want to throw it at them so they can share their story, and let's learn more. Let's have a conversation, because a lot of people out there think that you could be vegan and you can't get COVID. That is not true. Anybody can get COVID. Anybody. So, and of course, being vegan, yes, being healthy does help you. But even being healthy doesn't mean that you won't have repercussions from this virus, as we're going to learn today. So, I'm going to throw it at Andy, and we're going to hear what he has to say. Tell us more about you and what you do, and let's get into your story.
Yeah, well, as you said, I run Compassion Company, which is a vegan clothing line, and for I've been running it for about 8 years, and for the past five or so, I've been just traveling to every veg fest all around the country. That's led me to live a nomadic, like van lifestyle, and that has obviously put me in a weird place in terms of this pandemic, because all of Helene's wonderful events, I can't do them anymore because they're not happening, along with all the other veg fests. So I was in California when all this hit, and I decided to retreat to the East Coast where I'm from. I went to a safe place down in Atlanta. I stayed there for a month and was practicing every possible precaution that I could, barely leaving this neighborhood that I was in, and wearing the mask and washing hands and all of the precautions. And then I went to head up to stay with my sister in Vermont. She lives alone. She's very isolated. She's been working from home for 6 weeks at that point. And during my drive up, I started to develop a sore throat. And I was monitoring my temperature. I have a thermometer in the van, and my temperature was fine. So I was like, yeah, it's probably nothing, allergies, something like that. And I stopped at my parents' place in Connecticut just to quickly grab some mail and packages that had arrived there over the last couple of months. And I mentioned to my mom, I do have a little bit of a sore throat, and she, the alarm bell. She used to be a physician's assistant. She was like, "Why don't you like stay here for a couple of days and let's just see how that develops before you bring this up to your sister?" And thankfully they have a spare bedroom, and I'd have my own dedicated bathroom to stay in. And it seemed like over precautious, but we're like, well, it's safer than my sister. She doesn't have that good of a setup for like quarantining and self isolating. And by that evening, I had a low grade fever, and I started to develop all of these symptoms. They just came on super quickly. I got chills. I couldn't get warm enough. I was just, taking super hot showers. I was laying under like 10 blankets and wearing a hoodie and sweatpants and all of that. I developed aches. And my fever at its highest point within one day was 102.9. And so that just knocked me out entirely for several days. And I was able to get an appointment with a emergency care place. And since I didn't at the time have a cough or any lung congestion, they thought maybe it's strep throat. And I've had strep throat many times in my life, and it just felt different. So, but we still got the antibiotics for that just in case. And I started taking them, and the fever started to go down a little bit, but I started to develop this intense nausea that was happening for several days, nausea, cold sweats. And eventually that did dissipate. And it was just kind of this low level of nausea for like a week or so. But the weird side effect that I haven't heard anyone talk about, so maybe it's unique to me, but my mouth got really sore. It was very sensitive. Like if I ate like a slice of orange, I'd get like 10 canker sores. It just hurt to eat anything. And so I talked to my doctor again, and he said, we should probably get you tested for COVID because what you're experiencing is not normal for strep throat. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get an appointment to do the drive through test for 3 days or so. And at this point, my fever had been broken for maybe 6 days, which is not ideal for testing. But I got the appointment. I went, sat in my car for 2 hours, got up to the tent. They did the nasal swab. And a lot of people ask me this, but they don't. There are different versions. My version was one in which the swab just had to go 1 inch up in my nose. It wasn't the 4 inches all the way back in my nasal cavity thing, thankfully. And you get your result in 15 minutes, and it came out negative. And so it was a relief, but also there was still this mystery that was happening of like, well, what actually is this? And I talked to my doctor again, and he told me about the high failure, like the high rate of false negatives of these tests. And when you're doing the test, they actually give you a paper with all this information. And in it, they say, this test is not approved by the FDA. There's not like an actual good test yet, essentially. But because it's emergency times, we're able to push through and do these tests and understand they have a high rate of false negative. And so my doctor told me that basically, if you don't get the test, at least with this test, at the height of your fever, you're not really shedding the virus at a rate that usually the test will pick up. And also on that day, I did develop a cough and chest congestion, which are the classic symptoms. And of course, that was really scary because, I'd heard about the timeline that usually between days 7 and 10, which was right where I was, smack dab in the middle of that, your symptoms will come back full force. And so all the timeline fit. My doctor said, even though you got the negative test, it's my opinion that it's highly likely that you have COVID, and you should keep doing what you're doing, which is isolating. It was such a weird situation because I was literally in one room for 2 weeks straight, aside from going to get this test. My parents were bringing me food. Thankfully, they're great cooks. They love to make vegan food. So I was all set on that front, as much as it sucked to eat. Um, and so I was just like super isolated and in a very good place. And we were very cautious. And my parents didn't develop any symptoms because of that. And so then, yeah, after about 2 weeks and the symptoms started to decline, the cough started to go away, but I felt this low level chest pressure for about 5 more days beyond that. And I still do have a bit of a cough that emerges every now and then. But thankfully, I've been, other than that, like absolutely symptom free for maybe 3 or 4 weeks at this point. So I count myself to be very lucky that I have, a loving family with the capability to house me and feed me and keep me isolated and healthy and all of that. So that was my experience. It was very scary for about 2 weeks, and now I am symptom free and I feel totally fine. So I count myself to be very lucky in all this.
And you don't know how you got it.
I have no idea. The person I was staying with in Atlanta was continuing to work at a vet. They had shut out their lobby to customers. They were like, essentially, customers come in, text, and say, "My dog's here." They go out. They were all wearing masks, gloves, all those precautions. That's kind of the only weak point, unless I picked it up. We did like one or two grocery runs and wore the masks and washed the hands and let the groceries sit in the garage for 3 days and all of that stuff. But there's nothing that was obvious to me about where I could have gotten it from.
Yeah. So Tammie, you actually do know where you got exposed.
Well,
So let's hear your
I
story.
suspect. I highly suspect.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know 100%, but just the
Right.
odds. Um, I I'm a massage therapist, and I I developed symptoms. I think it was March 10th. They didn't stop massage therapy until I think March 22nd here in North Carolina. Um, so I was working as things were just starting to be taken a little bit more seriously. I was still working, but becoming more aware of what was happening. And at that point, transmission was still largely considered to be via surfaces, touching hands, all those kinds of things. So at my both places of work, we had instituted, no more shaking hands, asking clients to wash their hands when they come in, extra sanitizing of all the surfaces, all of that kind of thing. Um, and I had one of my last clients on the last day that I worked came in, and she was telling me that her chest felt tight. This is not an unusual thing. I work with a lot of clients who have a lot of tightness in through these muscles and through here. And this was a regular client of mine, and we'd worked those kinds of areas before. So it didn't set off any alarm bells for me. And so I worked on her. I spent a large portion of the time working her face up. It was a 90-minute massage. So, I'm enclosed in a small room with very little ventilation, basically having somebody breathe right in my face for, 90 minutes at a time, each client. And after our session, she said she felt better, and so that was good. Um, and I finished up working that night, and I went home, and I just continued to read because it just really gripped me how different people were experiencing things, how it was being handled in other countries versus how it was being handled here. And I just really didn't feel that we were taking it as seriously, as quickly as we needed to be. And I felt like, especially in my profession, that we were lagging in what we needed to do to be responsible. And so I actually spoke with my boss Sunday. I was supposed to work again on Monday. I spoke with my boss, both bosses again, um, and explained that I just didn't feel comfortable working as this was starting to unfold. I didn't feel it was safe or responsible because I could be a vector. I could infect other people, not know it because we were just learning about the asymptomatic transmission that was becoming more and more apparent, or the pre-symptomatic transmission. Um, and so I stopped working at that point. And then 2 days later, I developed symptoms. My first symptom was actually tightness and pressure in my chest. Um, I didn't have a fever yet at that point, but I knew that something was wrong. I didn't feel right. Um, a day after that, Scott, my partner, developed a tickle in his throat. um, so it was definitely me giving it to him, not the other way around. He had also been isolated for about a week prior to that, anyways, because his work let everybody start working remotely. So I was the only one who was still kind of going out. So it was definitely me. um, and so at that point, I started quarantining, and I thought, well, I'm healthy, I'm young ish. I'll be sick for 2 weeks, then I'll be better. And I had kind of been told what to expect just from reading the news and all the articles. And a few days later, my symptoms took kind of a different turn. I mean, I had kind of the classic stuff of the chest stuff. I had a little cough. It wasn't bad, but just if I would breathe deeply or laugh, I would cough. But my worst symptom actually became my GI issues. I had just horrible issues, just terrible pain. I couldn't eat for over a week. I managed an orange a day because I felt like I needed some vitamin C, something in my body. But it was really horrible. It was the worst food poisoning I'd ever had, but for like 7 or 8 days, just unrelenting, unending. It made it hard to sleep because you'd have to kind of keep getting up and rushing to the bathroom. And it was truly miserable and terrifying. And I thought, well, maybe I don't have this. Maybe I have something else. Maybe I actually have food poisoning. And then I started to read articles about how actually a good percentage of people with COVID did have GI issues. And I read a really scary one coming out of Wuhan, that of their patients who were hospitalized, if they were hospitalized and they had GI issues, their chance of being discharged was very small. Something like 30% was their chance of survival. So that's when I started to get really afraid and wanted to really not go into the hospital because I figured if I got so bad that I needed to be in the hospital, then I didn't feel like my odds were going to be as good as I'd want them to be. I actually even made out a will one night because I was so scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. You go to sleep and you don't know, are you going to wake up the next day? Because your body is having a hard time. I was very lucky because Scott really didn't get as sick as I got. He was a much more mild case. And so he was able to care for me and look after me, even though he wasn't feeling well himself. If he had been as sick as I was, I don't really know what we would have done. So I was like Andy, I was very lucky to have people to kind of be there and look after me when I needed some help. Not that he had to cook me any food because I couldn't eat anything, but he tried. And then that eventually started to get a little better. I was able to eat a little bit each day. Like I started with smoothies and very like vegetable soup, very basic, easy stuff to digest. But even now, I can tell I'm not absorbing all the nutrients properly. Like even now, my gut is still repairing itself. It's still rebuilding from, I call it Hurricane Rona. Because it's like the virus is like this, storm that just trashed my body. And the thing that I think the next thing that was terrifying was that I wasn't getting better. I mean, I was better from the initial like worst of it, but I wasn't better. Like I thought, okay, I'm done now. I should be fine now. But I wasn't. I was exhausted all the time. I still had the chest pressure. I still had like burning. It felt like my body was on fire. My upper body was on fire. My face was tingling. My arms were tingling. Fevers every day, like would vary from, low to kind of 101, between 99 and 101. And just day after day after day. And I kept thinking, all right, any day now, this is going to be done. And it wasn't. So I finally reached out to my doctor, who I had seen actually in the middle of my illness. I reached out to her. She brought me in, not thinking I had COVID because of my GI issues. She wouldn't have brought me in if she thought I had it. She gave me a flu test and I tested negative for flu A and flu B. And her face kind of fell when she saw that I didn't have the flu. So they kind of scooted me on out of the office at that point. And she said, go home, quarantine, act like you have it, and you'll be better in a few weeks. So 7 weeks later, I contacted her and told her what was going on. And she said, I'll just take vitamins. I was like, yeah, no, I need some help. I need some tests. I was started learning that there were clotting issues that people started having. And since I was having burning and pain in through my chest and through my lungs, I was afraid I was getting like a pulmonary embolism or some kind of clotting problem. So I begged her for a D-dimer test, which is a blood test that checks to see if you're having clotting issues. And I mean, it doesn't tell definitively, but it's a good indicator. And I figured if I was having them, I needed to know so I could get treated, because there's medicine you can be on for that. And if I wasn't having them, that was going to be a huge relief. So I just wanted to know. So after about a week, I convinced her to let me get this blood test. So she sent me to a lab to get the test. She still didn't want me in the office yet at that point, even though I'd had a negative COVID test at week 8 as well. And after the D-dimer came back, I was in the normal range, which was a huge relief. And then she brought me into the office to do another exam on me. I feel like I've been talking for a really long time.
No, you keep going. You've got a lot to say. Just keep going.
So she brought me back into the office last week. And in between all of this, I had been learning more and more about this. They're calling it a post-viral syndrome, and it happens with other viruses, but not to the extent that they think it's happening with COVID. So basically, there are probably tens of thousands of us who have had the virus, and it has triggered in our bodies an inflammation response, an inflammatory response, like a kind of a chronic one, instead of just the acute one that everyone worried about with the cytokine storm and people crashing in the hospitals. This is like a chronic one that just kind of keeps burning. And so I kind of let her know that that's what I thought was going on. She brought me in, she did, an exam, and she basically told me she thought I had allergies, which I've never had in my life, acid reflux, which I hadn't had that, and anxiety, and that was causing my chest burning, even out to here. I mean, I would see, down here, but like out to here, I don't know. And that was causing my face tingling and my arm tingling and my fevers and my just all the weird random symptoms, my lack of appetite, just all the weird random symptoms. And she said, you might have had a virus, but that's causing issues, but I don't think it was, she said it wasn't necessarily that virus. Like she wouldn't even say the name of the virus. Like it was this boogeyman that she didn't even want to invoke into her office. So I don't think she's, been kind of keeping up on some of the latest information. And it's hard for doctors. It's hard for healthcare providers because they're building the plane as they're flying it. And they're not used to this. They're used to having a playbook to go by where they can be like, oh, this symptom, this is what we can expect. And here they were told one thing, but the thing they were told was old information at this point in a disease that is so new, and there's so much new information coming out about it. Where I've gotten a lot of my information is from a couple of really great Facebook groups for people who have been sick for weeks and months, sharing their experiences. And that's where I learned about getting the D-dimer test. That's where I found out that I wasn't alone and I wasn't crazy and I wasn't broken. There wasn't something wrong with me, that I'm the only one who didn't get better after a couple of weeks, which is a huge relief. And just the group itself, everyone's experiences were very similar to mine. And I started to feel very fortunate because a lot of people had even worse symptoms, going on for as long as I've had. Even more scary things. There was someone who had a cardiac arrest at day 50 that was related to damage that COVID caused to her heart. Just very, very serious things that the virus kind of ways laced to it. Basically, they're feeling that it's more of a vascular disease and that it attacks pretty much anything it can attach to, and it attaches through the ACE2 inhibitors. And those are found throughout your body. They're found in your heart, in your kidneys, in your lungs, in your small intestine. So all of those things are subject to damage. And then you factor in that you've got the inflammation creating additional damage, and the lack of oxygen being transported creating additional damage. So it's kind of a perfect storm. But thankfully, these groups exist, and the medical community is starting to realize that this is a thing. There's actually Mount Sinai in New York City. Of course, New York City would be on the forefront because they got hit hardest first. Mount Sinai in New York City has actually set up now a post-COVID sort of long-term care for people who have been sick for months, and they're starting to study them and starting to figure out what's going on and what can they do to help. There are the National Health Service in Great Britain has been tracking, I think something like 200,000 people's symptoms over the course of months, and 1 in 20 of the people that they've been tracking have continued to have this kind of post-viral syndrome happening. There's an institute in France that is starting to study this, and they've been overwhelmed by people who need their help. Like they're turning away people because it's more than they can even kind of manage. So there's just a huge, there's going to be a more and more coming out about this. It'll probably get its own name at some point. But the scariest part was just the not knowing and the thinking I still had the virus and that it was still attacking me and that I could be making other people sick, and I couldn't go see my mom. I didn't want to risk making her sick. So just the not knowing was really probably even worse than the symptoms. I'm going to stop talking now.
I mean, your Facebook post that described some of what you felt when you were the sickest was, I mean, and one thing everyone needs to know is when I approached Tammie about this, I approached her first. It was because of a common friend's post that she had said, I still have repercussions from this virus. And knowing that she had it pretty early on in March, I was thinking about her and thinking about writing to you, and you let me know where you were at, which triggered my idea to see if we'll do this. And the first thing that Tammie said was, I'm a really private person. But after my doctor's appointment today, I feel like we need to talk about this. So I really appreciate that, because a lot of people hear about this or it's read in an article that such and such happens, but to have a living person, a face who's saying, it's not a hoax, this is what has happened to me, this is what's happened to the two of you, two different experiences with the same virus. And I hope, Andy, you're not scared because of that day 50 thing, heart attack. I mean, I would be like, I don't have this virus. I don't want to get it. I'm obsessively staying home. And that's the fear. I mean, it's one thing to get as sick as you've gotten, but it's another thing to go day 50, day 60, day 80, the rest of your life. You could be impacted by, not the flu, but what, some people use the flu. But to think it's a virus that is causing such damage to your bodies. I mean, that is incredibly scary.
And I think, I can't speak for Andy, but I think for people who've had it, who've felt the repercussions, like who can't get back to their normal routines, who are still out of work 2 months later, like there are people in the group again that it has been so helpful to share experiences with, and also see how I feel so grateful, because there are people in the group who have lost their jobs because their employers have said, well, how can you still be sick? Everyone else has been back after 2 weeks who had this. Why are we don't believe you, basically. Like they're not being believed by their employers. They're not being believed by their health providers who are dismissing them. I mean, mine doesn't believe that I have this, even though I've sent her information about it. Everything matches up. But she just, because it hasn't been in the stuff that she's kind of been given, she's still trying to work with me and work with my symptoms. She believes that I have symptoms, But she's not dismissing that completely out of hand. But there are other providers who just say, oh, you just have anxiety. You're just watching the news too much, go home and go about your lives. And people are saying, no, I can't walk to the kitchen without getting out of breath. Like, that's not just regular anxiety. People can't play with their children after 2 months of being sick. They're experiencing still very scary things. And to not be believed by their loved ones or by their people, by the providers who are supposed to, that they're supposed to be able to turn to for help, or who have their jobs in jeopardy because of it. I mean, there's just some real repercussions that are happening because of a certain set of expectations versus the reality of what, a subset of people who are infected with this virus experience. And so that's really why I said, I need to talk about this, because it's only going to continue. More and more people will be infected by this virus. And so it will be seen more and more. And so the more people can be made aware of that, the better. Oh, one of the other things I noticed in the group was that people were posting, once they were able to start eating again, their body was craving fresh fruits and vegetables. So I thought that was a good plug for, even though being vegan doesn't keep you from getting this. I do think that since I went into this healthy, some of my symptoms were not nearly as bad as what other people did describe. And their bodies, they're listening to their bodies are demanding fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's what they're feeding their bodies to help them get better and help them heal, this anti-inflammatory diet. Hello.
Yeah, I know, like, what I was craving, my parents like, what do you want? I was like, I just want a huge plate of steamed broccoli. Like, I just knew. I was like, give me all of the greens. I ordered some green drink powder thing, because I was like, I feel like I just can't get enough greens in me right now. And also just, fresh fruit, bananas, berries, all those things were definitely what I knew that from my education, but like, I just intuitively, I was like, I need all of these. I don't need, bread and like all that stuff. Like right now, I just need all these fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on something interesting. To me, really, what's the scariest about all of it is just the wide range of symptoms that people seem to have. And I don't know if it's because there's variations of the virus or what, but that was what was so scary, because you'd be like, oh, there's these classic symptoms and I have some of them, but I also have this thing that I haven't heard anybody talk about. And it was just almost this feeling of, I feel like my immune system is being attacked right now. I had a hangnail that it like just developed into this big red like pussy thing. I've never had that happen before, and I was like, normally my body, if that happened, it would just take care of it right away. And it just felt like either it was so preoccupied with fighting the fever or whatever, but it just felt like I didn't have an immune system for at least 2 weeks, and that was very scary. Just sort of knowing that there wasn't necessarily a universal experience. And I count myself very lucky, and I'm so sorry to hear that you are still dealing with this right now. And it must be like, it's scary. It's terrifying not to be believed about the pain that you're in.
Oh, well, I'm lucky in that, like, obviously my partner believed me because he was sick, and I came home and I told him, I said, well, my doctor thinks I have allergies. He said, oh, since when have allergies been contagious? Because I was sick too.
Right.
The other thing, the one thing that I have a partner who believed me, and I have bosses who, I can, when I'm ready to go back to work, which will probably be a very long time because it's massage therapy. But the bosses who sort of believe me, but I wasn't in the same situation that some other people were in, which will increase your stress, which decreases, your ability to recover and heal. But touching on Andy, it's a possibility that instead of your immune system not being there, it was actually ramped up to 1,000, like dialed up to 1,000, which is like, instead of your body sending out just a few little things to take care of that hangnail, it was like, attack, because it's just trying to defend everything. I sort of describe it as like it's like a firefighter with PTSD, and his hose is on full throttle, and he's just like shooting at everything not just the fire he's there to fight, but like any little thing, because he's just so freaked out. And that could well have been what, you were experiencing a little bit of that with some of the kind of the weird symptoms that you were having, not necessarily that your immune system wasn't there, but that it was just like, if you had tiny little cuts in your mouth, and then the orange would kind of exacerbate that, and then your immune system would just be like, we got to heal that now, and just kind of so that it's one theory anyways. I don't know if that's more reassuring or not.
Well, I'd rather have an overzealous immune system than an absent one, so it is reassuring.
What's really scary
I've had three good days now in a row. So it kind of comes in waves. And that's the other weird thing, is like, you'll feel better for a few days and you're like, all right, I'm over this. Things are good. And then like you'll do something. Oh, that's the other thing that everybody has in common who has this post-viral syndrome, is that overexertion puts you into a relapse. And overexertion, it can be different from person to person. It could be you walked for a mile and that was too much. It could be you did dishes and laundry and made dinner all in the same day, and that was too much. It could be you decided to go for a run because you finally felt great, because you were training for a marathon before this hit you, and that was too much. And then you get a relapse and you feel terrible for another week or another 10 days. And then you start to climb out and feel better again. So I'm on day 3 of feeling better after a relapse. So I'm hoping that just continues, that there are no more relapses. I'm sorry to interrupt, Helene. What were you going to say?
No, that's okay. What's interesting is that when it comes to the numbers of positive cases for COVID, neither of you are in them, because you both tested negative.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that in itself says that the numbers are skewed, the numbers are off, because there's a lot more people like you than there are like who have tested positive and have the symptoms, and a lot of those people are actually in the hospital, and we know a lot of those people didn't come out. So it's really really interesting and scary at the same time as well, because there are people in New York to this day, like a few weeks ago, one of Stephen's friends tried to get tested and was denied. And
in
supposedly everyone can get a test in New York. Yes, everyone should be able to get one. But the person doing the test said, you don't have enough symptoms.
Wow.
Exactly. And that isn't right, because according to, I watch Cuomo every day pretty much, we have more tests than people who are being tested. Yet someone in New York couldn't get a test. I know for Andy, you got your test in Connecticut. Just for the people who don't know that, he went to like the CVS thing that they're starting to do in North Carolina now. Is they're going to have the CVS drive-through testing, and I think about that when they said it, I immediately went to Andy because that's where you got yours done, and of course the Abbott test, which is probably what they used, has a 1/3 to 1/2 fail rate. And that, if you're asymptomatic, is a big problem, because if you're asymptomatic, you're shedding the virus and you're causing other people who could get really sick from it, yet you're fine. And that leads to like a whole other societal thing where people right now, I don't know, the phases, we go through these phases and reopening, and that doesn't mean the virus is gone. That just means that the healthcare system can manage when everyone gets sick. And that's a problem, because people are going to continue to get sick if we don't continue to take actions to make it so that less people spread this. Hence why I don't leave my house. So I didn't really leave my house before this, except to go and do my events. So this isn't too surprising for, I live with 2 introverts. This is almost like dreamy, which I've said a lot on a lot of this. If we were extroverted, this would probably be, well, I live with 2 people, so that and 5 animals. So I mean, that in itself is a lot. But if you're extroverted, you want other people. Whereas I don't even want to talk to anybody. I do this and I'm good. So, but for, the 2 of you, your doctor, Tammie, complete opposite of Andy's doctor. Andy's doctor said, yeah, you know what, I don't care that test was negative. We consider you positive. Your doctor's like, uh, I don't understand. It's her responsibility to research and be up to date on all the stuff that obviously we easily found the information. Right? I looked up the diarrhea thing for, I mean, like if that was what the causes were with regards to diarrhea if you had the virus. I read that article that you mentioned. It said if you have diarrhea that your percentage of dying is higher than it is if you did not. And I was like, oh. Right? So, yes, I'm very familiar with what you read. How your doctor isn't surprises me. Because that didn't take very long. That took about 5 minutes of research to find that. And it literally scared the shit out of me. So I was like, because I know someone who's
I didn't
dealing
have
with,
any
I had
reps to
diarrhea.
scare out.
So, I mean, if anyone out there, if you're watching, if there are people watching, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to write them in the comment section and we'll answer them because you right now have two people who have been through this or been through, I don't know if I want to say past tense, are going through this currently. And I mean, to go over timelines for Tammie, we talked about beforehand, it's 11 weeks right now.
Yeah,
11
it'll be
weeks
11 weeks
and
on Tuesday.
on Tuesday.
And
And then
I'm
Andy,
hoping that I can stop counting soon. I'm hoping that,
I know,
of course, every time,
I
every time
know.
you kind of you feel better, then you get hopeful, and then it's like you get whacked back down again, and then it's even more crushing than it was before because you thought, oh, I really thought I was done with this. I have a question
Yeah,
for
I mean,
Andy.
go
Sure.
for it.
Andy, did you ever lose your sense of smell or taste?
I did not, thankfully. Although it was almost like a curse because my parents would make this delicious food that just hurt. It just hurt to eat the food, and also coupled with the nausea. That was on to me. That was the worst part. Like the fever sucked, but it was like I'm just laying in bed. I'm just laying in bed, and this sucks. And time's going by, and the days are flying by. But with food, it was like I know I need to eat something to sustain myself, but I don't want to because I feel nauseous and it hurts to eat it. But yeah, thankfully that was something I held on to. I was like, well, I haven't lost my sense of smell or taste yet, so that's something that I have.
There
How about
was an
you, Tammie?
interesting thing that came up. I did not either. I maintained both. Not that they, like Andy, did me a lot of good, but it was reassuring that I was like, well, at least there's something that seems to be unaffected. There was a very interesting correlation that came up in one of the groups that I belong to. There are medical professionals who are aware of these groups, and they're actually putting out surveys and starting to try to do some sort of informal studies about symptoms and timelines from the people in the groups because there are thousands of people in these groups. I think added together, it's something like 25,000 just in a handful of the groups. And one of the correlations was, well, there are two correlations. One was the later they got tested, the more likely it was a negative test, just like what your doctor was saying, Andy. And then the other correlation was, and this kind of is mind blowing, and they were stunned, is that if you didn't lose your sense of smell or taste, you probably tested negative, even though you had every other symptom. And so they're trying to figure out what is that connection between people who have that particular symptom almost always testing positive versus people who have every other symptom more likely testing negative, even if they're getting tested earlier on. So that was
Wow.
another. So they're starting to look into that now too. But that's just another example of how there's so much we really don't know. We just keep learning more that shows us how little we knew even 2 months ago, even 1 month
Right.
ago.
Wow. Yeah, I had not heard that at all, but that's just adds to the complexity of this whole thing.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
science keeps evolving, and that makes sense because I mean, it's only been in existence in this country since January, and in China probably since November. So how do you know? How do you know? Oh, hey, Jennifer
Mhm.
Green, that's really sweet. She's in New York. Hugs and wishes to you both. Anytime, we thank you for sharing your experiences. Yeah, she's one of my friends on Long Island. So, New York
Oh,
being
thank
really hard
you.
hit. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Jennifer. Oh, what was I gonna say? I don't remember. Uh-oh. So, yeah, this has been needed. So I really, really thank you both for sharing your experiences, what you're going through, uh, what's going on. Tammie, the fact that you're in those groups, and I totally get finding solace in knowing that other people have gone through what you're going through, right? And I'm not one of those people that has to go through something in order to empathize. So I get it. I don't want it. I'm sorry that you have it,
Yeah.
and
You
I do
definitely
hope
don't want it.
I don't
Nobody
want
wants
it.
this.
I don't.
I don't
No,
care how
right,
healthy you are. You don't want this because you don't know. It's a huge gamble you don't want to take.
right. Hi, Cheryl. Thank you so much. She says it's great info. Thanks for sharing your stories. Cheryl's over in Durham, so North Carolina. Really, this is I don't know. I want to try to get to a positive note. Well, you're both alive, so that's a great, great thing. And
Andy,
right.
maybe you
And
can make us t-shirts. Maybe you can make t-shirts that say "I survived COVID and all I got was this lousy t-shirt."
I'll get right on that.
That's exactly what you can do. I know there was something that I wanted to say or add, and I just don't remember what it is at this moment. I'm trying to like get it to come back by delaying, but it doesn't seem to want to come back. So it's really what are you gonna do? So to go on to a little bit of a different note, so let's do some self promotion. Andy, I mean, part of the reason I created Virtual Veg Fest was for you, right? Because Compassion Company that can't go to in person events, and we need to do something so that we all survive this virus because it all fits in, right? People are losing their lives, people getting really sick, and people losing their livelihood, especially people like us who depend on putting people together, about 2 to 7,000 people together in a space that probably is too small for that, and being on top of one another, which is what makes a veg fest feel so good, is the energy. And now we can't do that. And we don't know when we'll be able to. And your livelihood as you drive around in your van all over the country is go to these in-person events. That's why you were in California. You just watched each one get canceled. Drop one, drop two, drop
Yep.
three. And then, it was like, well, no point in staying out west. And I was like, go back east because I'm not going to be able to do anything here. And at that same time, we were starting to work on Virtual Veg Fest, and you were like one of the first people you were actually, I think, the first person I contacted. And to get it, because if anyone doesn't know, when I have questions about events or vendors or pretty much anything to do with Veg Fest, I go to Andy. And he's my go-to person to throw things off of him and get very honest feedback, which is exactly what everyone would need when you're doing stuff like we do. So Andy always gives me brutally honest feedback, even when I manipulate the situation to get him involved. It's something that maybe wasn't like, maybe I should have not done, but I still did. It wasn't any sweat off his back. He just made some money that day in his time. So, but Compassion Company is one of the highlight vendors at most of our events. I know a lot of the organizers definitely love to have you there. And of course, the Bearded Vegans, you have your podcast, which is, you're still doing and you still did while trying to recuperate from being sick.
Amazingly,
So,
yeah. We
yes.
didn't miss a week.
Right.
It was close. It was very close, but we squeezed one out.
Right. So, I mean, throw some self-promotion your way so people who don't know who you are can learn who you are.
Yeah, well, compassionco.com is where you can get the merch, the shirts, stickers, buttons, all that stuff. I am still shipping out a couple times a week, and it's it's all sweatshop free. It's organic. It's USA made. It's all the good stuff. Low impact dyes, water based inks. Try to maintain the vegan ethic throughout the whole chain of production. And compassionco.com for that. Compassion Co. and all the social media stuff. The Beard Vegans, we release a new episode every single Wednesday. We have 230 episodes in the back catalog already, so plenty to dive into. If you don't know where to start, we actually made a starter guide that you can find in the feed as well. And you can find us anywhere you find podcasts: Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, beardvegans.com as well. And we started that podcast to have a place for, it's not like a how to go vegan podcast. It's for more nuanced discussions about like ethical gray areas or things going on in the community and things of that nature. So if you're looking for like a sense of, a way to talk with vegans about things you have questions about that maybe aren't so obvious, that's the type of podcast that we try to create there. So beardvegans.com.
Right. And also to throw a plug, you can also get Andy's stuff on virtualvegfest.com.
This is
another
true.
avenue that you can do that. So Tammie, when things start to get better and people are local to the Triangle and they're like, wow, I need a massage therapist. Just by bonus, my massage therapist would happen to be vegan, because vegan communities tend to like to go to people who are vegan and throw their money at them instead of somebody else. Want to tell them how to find you?
I work at, I did work. Who knows what's going to be happening? Actually, probably the best way to find me is I do have a Facebook page that I haven't used actively because I've been working for other people. But Wise Body Therapeutics is my Facebook page, which I should start probably doing something with now. Because I don't know how long it'll be before I'll be going back to kind of my regular places of employment. So yeah, you can find my page at Wise Body Therapeutics, should you be so inclined, and I'll maybe even do something with it.
Right. If you need any help, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help you. So really, Andy, Tammie, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're healthy and you're happy and you look great, even though you've been through so much in the last couple of months, 3 months or so. And, to get on here with me live, Andy, this is like easy for you. But for Tammie, really, thank you for being willing to share your story with, whoever's going to see this, thousands of people, that's all. So really, that's greatly, greatly appreciated. Now, everyone else, this was not the easiest show to do today because of the environment of our country. So just know that I pushed through this. It was difficult to do something not completely off topic, but on topic, but off topic, which is the strangest thing, because we're struggling with the virus, and now we've got a lot of oppression going on and riots. So I want everyone to stay safe and wear your mask, social distance, and please take this seriously. If this hasn't shown you why, then I don't know. I don't know what to say. But, I hope it doesn't have to impact something that you care about, that you love, for you to take it seriously. But otherwise, everyone have a great rest of your Sunday.
Can I add
okay? Sure.
Can I add one more thing? Mm-hmm. There's a book that John Edgar Weideman wrote called Fever. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's a collection of short stories. And he's writing about racism in America. He's writing about the Philadelphia fires. And he's also concurrently writing about yellow fever and what was happening in America at the time of that. And he actually brings together this idea of fever and illness and sickness in America and parallels it with the racism that we are still plagued with now. And I couldn't help but think of that collection of short stories and how I don't think that these two issues are necessarily so separate. There's a lot of interconnectedness and a lot of overlap and a lot of truths to be found when you start to dig a little deeper. And so if anyone hasn't read that book, Fever, John Edgar Weideman, it's an amazing collection of short stories that might give you a different perspective.
No, thank you. If anything, when we're done, if you can write a link to that in the comment section, so people, when they go through, will see that would be absolutely wonderful, because I'm not sure I could write out that name. Right?
It's a book I read years ago, and it had a huge impact on me, and it's just come back to my mind recently with everything that's going on.
Yeah, and I'm sure if we decided to switch topics and go there, we could go for another hour.
Yeah.
It just completely surprise people. Where did this go? But really, thank you for sharing that. And Andy, do you have any
Thank you
final
for
words?
hosting us.
No, I think you nailed it. Stay safe, take it seriously. No matter how healthy you are, this can impact you. So yeah, be
Sure.
precautious.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a happy Sunday. We'll try to have a happy Sunday and stay safe.
You
Bye.
too. Thanks, Elaine.
You're welcome.